Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional from Paris, France, Mr. Robertson Stewart. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. Rob is the president of RHS Consulting. He's an author, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of 3 books on leadership and management, and he's a professor of leadership at several well-known schools in Paris. So, Rob, before we talk about RHS Consulting, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Well, basically, I didn't start off in the management business, if I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
I started off my young career as a young man. I studied science first, so basically physics and chemistry, and then proceeded never to ever actually work in either of those industries at all. I then worked in finance, until about the age of 30 years old in Edinburgh, in Scotland, which is the financial capital of Scotland. And then I traveled to France because I met my future wife while I was in Scotland, while she was visiting. She was finishing her studies there, and I then joined Euro Disney, as it was called at the time, Disneyland Paris today. Which is that was in 1992. And because I didn't speak French, I had to start as a cleaner. Going from a financial advisor to cleaner, because I didn't speak French, basically. And it was a great lesson there in humility. And I really enjoyed my time. And it actually gave me a great advantage to learn French, because my colleagues at the time, none of them spoke English. So I had to learn French. So it was very good. And then I went from there, and very briefly, I went from there. I started to enjoy the hotel business. I went from there to becoming the first head housekeeper of a big hotel in Paris, which was the Méridien Étoile, which is 1,025 rooms. I then went on from there to go to Poland as a director of the most famous hotel in Poland, which is the Bristol in Warsaw. I then came back and forward between Budapest, Poland, and Hungary, and then Paris. And when I came back to Paris, eventually I was then general manager of the 2 biggest, well, the 3 biggest actually hotels in Europe, one after the other. So the Concorde Lafayette, which is now the Hyatt Regency Étoile, the Méridien Étoile, and the Santa Fe Hotel at Disney when I went back there. So that was basically all those hotels of 1,000 rooms and teams of between 700 to 1,000 people. So that's where I got my experience, if you like, as a leader of large teams and so forth, and then decided to go out on my own.
Wonderful. And that's when you started RHS Consulting.
That's right. Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's right.
So after so many years in the area of guest services, if I can use that term, between Disney and all the hotel,
yes, of course,
that you worked in. What were some of your learnings and challenges in the business?
Well, I think one of the learnings is that as you go forward, as you climb the ladder, if I can say it like this, it's a bit visual as an image. Don't try and run up the ladder. It's one step at a time. And I've always believed that before you go to the next stage of your career, you have to have sufficient learning, and you have to take your time and not jump too far at once, because then you have this basically syndrome of Peter, where you arrive at a stage where your competence is no longer in adequation with what you're doing. You have to be very careful about that. That's one of my main learnings. The other learning is really the other main learning is the importance of building relationships, healthy relationships with the people that are around you, and particularly people that work with you and for you, but also with you. And I've always considered whatever level people are at, it's basically a question of working with people, not people working for you. If I can say that. That's my 2 main learnings.
Yeah, no, these are fascinating. And what made you decide that you wanted to become a coach after so many years in business?
Well, it's because basically I was already doing it. It was because the way I managed, and it was because I really believed in the fact of being taking a close team, taking a close interest in each member of my close team, and so therefore it was a mix between coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
Which I've always believed in. So I was meeting my people on a very regular basis, my close teams. Realizing, of course, that it's not me. You mentioned guest service earlier. It's not me that's actually giving the service to the guest. It's the people that work with me. And so, in order to understand what's going on the shop floor, you have to understand the team, your direct team around you, and you have to spend time doing that and building those relationships. So from there, it was a natural progression to go towards coaching. Coaching in a more generic fashion, management and leadership, and to go on to teach as well.
Very interesting. So when you look at coaching, we'll spend the next 7-8 minutes talking about coaching.
Okay.
My first question to you is that at what stage of a professional or an entrepreneur's life should they look for a coach?
Well, I think the earlier the better, and that's that. I say that because to try and avoid making some of the mistakes that I made. Not that they'll obviously avoid every single mistake, because you have to make some mistakes to learn.
Right.
But at least to avoid some of the major mistakes. And I think also it's a fertile terrain, because when people are younger, of course, they tend to, they take impressions much more on board, and they're still building their belief system, and what they believe in as a manager or a future manager. I think that's the time that really they need guidance. Guidance has to be there. For example, when I talk with my students, or when I talk with my clients, I talk to them a lot about the importance of listening, about the importance of the soft skill set, if I can say that, inverted commas. But I talk a lot about the importance of listening, the importance of respect, the importance of care, and actually, every single person I meet, I tell the same thing. I say, care. It's all about your employees. It's not about your guest.
Correct.
Your guest, you're not taking care of your guest directly. Your employees are taking care of the guest. So for me, they have to learn about care, but caring for their staff, caring for the people who work with them. And the acronym I use often is CARE. You always care for your customer, but whose customer? Your very first customer is your employee. It's not your final customer.
Correct.
Because you are a manager, you're a leader, so they're your customers, and you must take care. When I say care, it's the acronym I love to use with that. Is customers are really everything. It's an acronym I use again and over again, because I truly believe that and a lot of the great theorists out there, of course, talk about care. And if you come back from the hotel industry, he's got a great example. Is from J.W. Marriott, who was the founder of the Marriott Group. Who had a great phrase. He said, take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers, and the business will take care of itself. And so, I mean, this is what I try and instill into people when I'm coaching, is really, and as I said, for that reason, I think it's really best to catch people early on, before they get into, because I've got some fairly nasty habits, which are built through the years, and better to try and avoid building those habits and build good habits.
Well said, in my opinion. And, I've spoken to many coaches from around the world, and one of the questions I love to ask them is that, 4 decades ago, coaching or mentoring was done either by a family elder or someone senior in the company who took a liking for you. Today, it's become a profession. What, in your opinion, has changed that this has become such a formalized profession?
I think it has to have become formalized. It's like anything. It's we could always, obviously, from the old style, from the time you're talking of, which I was still a young man at the time. Basically, you took advice, but it was mainly advice. It was mainly mentoring. It wasn't so much coaching. You got a lot of advice from your parents and your grandparents and so forth. I think what had to change is that people have to come to their own realization of where they're going. So there wasn't a profession. It has to be professionalized. in the sense that people have to come to their own conclusions. I think that's very important, and not just to be told to do this, do that, because people then have a tendency, unfortunately, to do exactly the opposite, and not to come to the realization of the right way forward for themselves. So I think it's like I would compare it to having meetings on a regular basis with people. With a family member, it's always going to be more informal. It's not going to be so structured. But today, with the speed that our society moves at, the speed that evolution moves at, and the speed that everything moves at, you need to have a formalized structure for this, so that in a way you ask the right questions. You know, the what, why, when, where, how, who, all these questions, but in a way that allows you and allows the person facing you, especially, to come to their own answer to the questions that they might have. Yeah, and you're there to guide them towards those conclusions, but not to give them directly the answer. Yeah, unless, of course, in the case where they just don't arrive at a conclusion. Yeah, then you can give some help. But I think for me it has to be formalized, and it's professionalized, and it's something that's it's too important, because a lot of people talk about the VUCA world, you know, the volatile, uncertain, you know, and all the rest. And complex, and what's the last part? Is it? I can't remember. Anyway,
thank you. That's a great response. My next question to you, Rob, is how has your own background, you know, in so many different businesses across so many different countries, supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Well, I think it's the main impact it's had on me is the importance of adaptability, to adapt to different cultures, because you know there's several levels of culture. Of course, you know, you go from anything from symbols, and then you can go to the heroes of each country, where you take each country in its own, and then you get to deeper levels of culture such as rituals and so forth, and then you come to value-based systems, which is the deepest level of culture. But my experience has been that you can't expect, working in different countries and different places, for people to adapt to your way of doing things. Yeah, you have to, a large extent, as in all management and leadership, you have to adapt yourself to the circumstances, the context, the people around you, the language, even if it's as simple as the language, to be able to understand a certain amount. For example, when I was in France, and I was in charge of hotels, I had to speak perfect French. There was no other solution, basically. So I think the importance of adaptability and adapting oneself and basically actually to follow Kenneth Blanchard's situational management model, situational leadership. So basically adapting always to the situation, the context, and the people who are facing you. For example, in Poland, it's a good story, because I arrived in Poland, and I'm of a highly participative nature. I love to get people brainstorming and all this, and I had some difficulty with that in Poland at first, because in the Polish culture, they were expecting someone just to be very extremely directive, and it wasn't my preferred management style. Correct. But at one point, I had to adapt myself to that. I just couldn't force everyone to do the things I was going to do the way I wanted. So adaptation, I think, is very important. And especially when you're dealing with different cultures, is to have an attitude, really, certainly the opposite of ethnocentric. Really to believe in diversity and to be open to other culture and other ideas. I think it's very important.
Wonderful. And, all of us have people who shape our lives, who influence us in our lives. How have you been shaped by some people, and how have they influenced your coaching?
Well, I got influenced by, I can remember two very good examples, concrete examples. There was one person, a senior colleague, when I was I think at that time I was rooms division manager of a hotel, so I had about 240 staff working for me, or with me, sorry. And what happened was that I was struggling a little bit, as I said before, I was taking a bite too much, at one time. So I asked the senior colleague, I said, what do you think I should improve? Well, where do I need to, look at to increase my skills and so forth? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, Rob, we'll see each other in a week's time. I said, no, a week, I'll think about this question, and we'll come back and we'll have a meeting about it. Okay. So off I went. The next week, I thought this meeting was going to last about an hour. It lasted 30 seconds because he said to me, he said, well, Rob, do you want your answers to your question? I said, yes, please. He said, well, I said it in French, so I'll tell you in French and then I'll translate it. It was, on est maître de nos silences et prisonniers de nos paroles. So it means we're masters of our own silence, but we're prisoners of what we say. I thought, oh. So that ended the meeting fairly fast. And then, of course, what he was telling me basically was that I spoke too much. And I wasn't listening enough to people.
Wonderful.
And I thought, oh, that was a great lesson for me. And it came from someone I respected enormously. The other lesson I got, I was very fortunate. One of my senior, another senior boss, who basically was a mentor for me, and who allowed me to, you know, as when you're young, you tend to get excited. You're very action oriented. You're very much into, let's just go for it and let's not think about it. So he taught me the importance. He taught me the importance of taking a step back and taking time to plan, and really taking a bit of time to take a bit of height compared to what I was doing, and taking time, give myself time to think and to be more responsive rather than reactive to situations, because I was reacting too much. And he taught me how to respond, to take a step back, to think, to be a more critical thinker, is what I'm trying to say. So that was really great lessons I learned from this.
Yep, absolutely great lessons. I love the one about talk less and listen more. I think that is a very, very powerful lesson.
Yeah, it was.
So Rob, let's now move to your books. You're an author of 3 books on leadership and management. Tell me a little bit about your books.
Well, the very first book came about. It's called Employee Power. So it's about the importance of treating employees well. So it's to give companies a competitive edge. And the reason I wrote that book was very simple. Is because I was having a discussion with someone one day, and we disagreed about what was more important. Was it more important to be a great manager for your people, or a great manager for your customers? Of course, I was decided for your people, and we couldn't see eye to eye on it, so I decided to write a book about it. so that's where the first book came from, and the second book came straight back to the questions of coaching. It's one-to-one, because I used a system which really was an integral part of my success as a manager, which was the one-to-one meetings. So no surprise. So it's my second book is called One-to-One. Yeah, and it's about how to coach people to make them more engaged and for success. Yeah, and using, coming back to actually giving people a very, very straightforward system to use to help young managers become effective in carrying out one-to-one meetings, which I believe is extremely important. And then the third book, Time to Manage. So Time to Manage is about 2 things. It's about how to choose your management style and how to choose the proper style at the proper moment. It's time to manage. So it goes into time management at one part of the book, and then it switches into, yes, but it's all very well to have techniques about time management, about how to use the Eisenhower matrix, how to use other things, other time management tools, the 4Ds, all this. But then it goes on to talk about, yes, but that's not the most important thing, because it's all very well to be efficient, but to become effective is something else entirely. And to become effective, it requires a lot of auto-analysis. It requires a lot of critical thinking skills, and it requires a lot of very good management and soft skills. In order to save all that time that you can then use much better, more effectively. So that's basically the three books so far. Yeah,
well said. And I'll go and check out your books on Amazon. So, and a couple of questions on leadership for you, since you talk on and teach leadership as well. A basic question, which I'm sure you've been asked many times: are leaders born or are they made?
No, they're made. because it's a very fast answer for me, because there are a certain number of things, of course, which build your personality. I believe that it's basically a nature versus nurture debate, isn't it? Yeah, it's your nature is okay. Some people say it's genetic and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe that you're the product of your environment. So and your environment might not be a great environment to start with. But then, as you become older, you're able to choose your environments, choose the people you work with, and so forth. I think that has a much bigger impact on your learning, and I think everyone can learn to be a leader. It's not outside anyone's reach to be a leader, I don't think, because there are a certain number of things that it requires, and one of the things, as we said earlier, is very simple: is to be a good listener and able to understand others. It's as simple as that. But that requires a lot of work. Yeah. For example, how to read people, how to read body language, all this kind of thing. It takes a while, but it's. I think it's with experience. I think the reason I say it is because when I started as a manager and a leader, I had a lot of lessons to learn, and I think through the years, I would say really my skills as a manager, as a good manager and a good leader, it took quite a number of years to get there. That's why I answer in that way.
Yeah, well said. My next question is, how does culture impact leadership?
Well, I think it was the famous phrase by Kenneth Blanchard: "Culture eats everything else for breakfast." Basically.
Correct.
But it's well, organizational culture is obviously, if you don't instill a proper culture in your organization, it's going to be very difficult to lead the organization, because, for example, let's take the example of something leading one-to-ones meetings, for example. When I first introduced it and I had a team of about 1,000 people, they were very reticent, the higher level management. And I think it's always to see what's in it for them. Yeah, but they soon found out what's in it for them, because once I'd shared the way it worked with them and so forth, and once we were all convinced to cascade this method of working throughout all the teams within the organization, it had a massive impact. Because the impact it had was basically, the very first impact was to do with communication and how effective the communication became in the organization, because it was cascading perfectly.
Yeah.
And it was going both ways, because obviously when you're in one-to-ones at all levels in the organization, you're getting information that's going both ways all the time. So I think that was a great example of how you can build culture. But even more than that, it's when it's to say it's how we do things around here. Well, no, it's how we work with others around here. That's how I put it. Yeah.
Very interesting. And my last question to you, Robin, this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey and such incredible learnings that you've spoken about, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away?
3 things. Okay. So the very first thing is to be explicit and not implicit. Don't implicitly believe that people will understand how to do things without telling them exactly what your expectations are.
Right.
So that's the very first lesson, especially for young managers, to be explicit. Yeah. The second thing is to always be an attentive listener, and don't miss that golden opportunity. Because sometimes you're going to miss the thing. It could be really a game changer for the entire organization if you're not listening. And it could be the guy that's cleaning the toilets. It doesn't matter who it is. Yeah, might tell you something. Oh, well, I've got this idea. You think, my goodness, that's really just a huge game changer. So I think really attentive listening is very important. And I think the third and perhaps the most important is always to keep your promises to people. Because one thing a lot of not just young managers, but a lot of people don't do is note things down, for example. Yeah. So they'll make a promise to someone, and then they'll forget to come through on it. And I think that's disastrous in terms of building trust and confidence. And I've always thought that, if when you make a promise to someone, you create hope. Yeah. But when you keep a promise, you create trust. And I think trust is fundamental, to an organization's culture. Trust at all levels.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, Rob, and your 3 amazing lessons: be explicit, not implicit; always be an attentive listener; and your third one, which is so powerful, is keep your promises, because that's what leads to trust. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your journey, about RHS Consulting, about coaching. I loved the acronym that you have for CARE, which is customers are really everything. I think that is so powerful. Thank you also for talking to me about your books. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.